Is the KTM 690 Enduro good at everything, or kind of more like good for nothing? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Josh, and after owning this 2018 KTM 690 Enduro for 18 months now, I feel qualified to give my unbiased opinion on just how good it is, what it's good for, and what it's not good for. So yeah, hang around. Now firstly, I have already done a video sort of talking about why I love this bike and why everybody else hates it. I'll put a link up in the corner here for anyone that hasn't seen that and wants to check it out. But essentially, I kind of wanted to do a more sort of a proper video just talking about the bike in general. Sort of a more of an unbiased review, talking about the good and the bad of this bike, what's gone wrong with it, the reliability. Everybody knows, well, everybody thinks that these bikes are unreliable. But really, what is this bike good for? Is it more of a big, heavy, powerful enduro bike? You know, she's carrying about 50 kilos more weight than your standard two-stroke enduro bike. Or on the other side of the coin, is it the ideal small, lightweight adventure bike? Probably one of the biggest advantages with the 690 is you can turn it into whatever you want. If you want it to be a lightweight adventure bike, you know, throw a better seat, a windscreen, a RAID fuel tank under the seat here, some USB charging ports or whatever, and off you go. It's a little adventure bike. If you want to do some proper enduro on it, well, you can strip it back to bare bones and off you go. Like, it is still very heavy for an enduro bike, but it is surprisingly capable. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now, probably one of the biggest questions is, can this really be anybody's unicorn? What is a unicorn? Well, a unicorn's different to everybody. It depends what you want to do, what you want from a bike. For me personally, and what I want to do at the moment, this is definitely the closest to a unicorn that I've owned. And you know, I've done both sides of the spectrum. I've come from an enduro background, you know, WR450s, KTM 500s, spent a lot of years riding those bikes, doing the fun stuff, proper off-roading. Eventually switched it up to the Tenere 700, did a lot of adventure riding, also took that thing bush, did some proper off-roading on the big T7 as well. It was more set up for adventure touring and stuff, but it was fun to, you know, see how far you could push it in the bush. And you know, I think the bottom line is, as much as I loved doing the adventure riding, I'd always end up getting myself into trouble. You know, I'd see those gnarly tracks, those big steep downhills, uphills, mud, that sort of stuff. On the T7 and big bikes like that, it's just way too easy to get into trouble. We all know the feeling when you're going down a hill and it starts getting steeper and steeper and you're thinking, am I going to be able to get back up this if I need to? Stuff like that. Obviously on a bike like this, I feel way more confident to keep going a lot further and, you know, not worry about that sort of thing, because it's so much easier to spin it around if I have to and get back up or whatever. Whereas a Tenere 700, Africa Twin, BMW 1250 GS, whatever, all those bikes, man, it's a big job just to turn them around on a skinny track. Then of course you got to find enough traction or a bit of a run up to get back up, whatever you were just coming down. We've all been there, and something like this, well, it's not a proper enduro bike where you can pretty much pick it up and spin it around. It is still a lot easier. Now don't get me wrong, there is something cool and fun about riding a T7 in single track and doing all the hard stuff on it. But I think it comes to a point where it just gets to be not so much fun anymore. And probably a lot of that comes down to age and fitness level. Like, you know, you start struggling to turn a bike around or even pick it up off the ground. It just becomes not much fun. And that's probably when it's time to start looking at a bike like this, or even something smaller, or either that or staying focused and staying on the easy trails, which I can't do. I just can't do. I've tried to do that. So it's a bike like this for me. Now, as I have mentioned previously in other videos, the reason I don't go back to a proper enduro bike such as the KTM 500 or something like that is basically the maintenance and the fact that, you know, this bike is capable on the road. It's not pleasant to ride on the road, like compared to a twin cylinder or, you know, whatever. The Tenere 700 was much nicer on the road. This thing will sit on the road, and that's what I want. I don't want to trailer a bike to the trails. I just want to be able to jump on this thing at home and ride out to the bush and ride it and then ride it home again. And I don't want to have to change the oil every 15 to 30 hours or whatever. That's not all laziness. That is also the fact that, you know, I might want to do some longer trips on this bike. You know, it is kind of nice having the option to do some bigger rides without having to worry about changing oil and that sort of thing. So yeah, I do change the oil and filters on this every 5,000 Ks. It's supposed to be 10,000, but for the sort of riding I do, 5,000 Ks is probably even a little bit too much, but I think it's a pretty good compromise. Okay, firstly, what are we looking at here? This one is actually 2018 model KTM 690. I did get it second hand. It had around about 22,000 kilometers on the bike when I got it. It's now just gone 35,000 k, so I've done 13,000 kilometers on it in the last 18 months, which isn't a lot. Obviously, you know, I'm doing this sort of harder riding. You don't rack up as many Ks. If I was adventure riding it, obviously, you know, I'd probably have done at least double that many kilometers. Now, the engine did have a rebuild at 16,000 kilometers, I believe. The previous owner told me that he found some crap in the oil. I've mentioned all this stuff in previous videos, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but some of you guys probably haven't seen those videos. Mechanic tore it down, found absolutely nothing wrong with it. He already had the parts for a rebuild, top and bottom rebuild. He was going away on a moto trip, so he ended up just getting the guy to rebuild the engine anyway. So yeah, had a full top and bottom end rebuild at 16,000 Ks. It was good for me because you know, I'll get extra life out of the bike now, hopefully. But yeah, it pretty much had all the stuff on it when I got it, which was good. I've added a few little bits and pieces here and there, but we'll get into what I've done to this bike a bit later in the video. Alright, so if you want to talk about negatives with the 690, now I'm just talking mostly about this model here. I don't know what changes they've made in subsequent year models. Some of them may not need a lot of the things that this one actually needed when you first buy it. Things like the Moto subframe bolt kit, because the standard subframe bolts were known to shear off and break and leave you stranded. This thing's had the fuel pump replaced with you know, a Japanese one that's supposed to be more reliable, durable. It's a common fail point with these bikes is the fuel pump. There is a Fuel Torque branded fueling dongle connected to this thing. I'm not exactly sure what that does. I have a feeling it richens up the mixture a bit, gets rid of that snatchy throttle. It has a different clutch slave cylinder. There was a problem, I think that was just with around about this year model, the clutch slave seals blew out or something, so it's got a different clutch slave on it. It has a different fuel filler thingy here because the stock one lets a lot of dirt go into the fuel tank, which is not ideal, of course. There are a whole lot of little silly things like that that need to be addressed to kind of get this bike up to scratch. That's, you know, that's straight out of the freaking box too. All that stuff though is fairly easy to sort out, but there are a couple of negatives that aren't so easy to fix. Now, I will quickly touch on the vibration from this bike. Now, I know that it has been fixed in, I think, 2019 and subsequent models from there. They have a dual balancer or something in the engine that takes away a lot of the vibrations. This thing does vibrate quite a lot. Now, I've gotten used to it. Coming from the T7, it was a bit of a shock to the system, but it doesn't bother me so much anymore. It is what it is. It's a big single cylinder. You're always going to have some kind of vibrations. If you don't like that sort of thing, don't get a 2018 or older. But by far, now we're going to get into the serious negatives of this bike, guys. By far and away, the worst thing about this bike is the frickin' gearbox. I hate this gearbox. Why? Firstly, the gears are too close together. First is way too high, sixth is way too low. For a supposed enduro bike, first gear needs to be way, way lower. And you can gear it down, of course, with a smaller front sprocket or a larger rear sprocket or both. But then you've got sixth gear revving its ass off at 60 Ks on the road. So if there was one thing I could change about this bike, it would definitely be the gearbox. I would want first gear lower, I'd want sixth gear higher, and all the rest of them spaced out nicely in between. A wide ratio gearbox is what this thing really, really needs, in my opinion, because, you know, if you're going to ride just enduro, you'll get an enduro bike. You won't be riding something like this just for enduro bike. This thing is designed to actually go on the road as well. It needs longer legs, as well as being able to ride through, you know, tight single track without being on the clutch constantly. The other thing that sucks about this gearbox, as everybody knows, is the false neutrals. This thing suffers from that really badly. I don't get them heaps. Like I've mentioned before, I think if you put a little bit of effort into changing the gears properly, you don't get those false neutrals. But yeah, if you're being lazy and clicking it up quickly through the gears, sometimes you'll find yourself rev bombing and yeah, making a fool of yourself in neutral, somewhere between fourth and fifth or fifth and sixth or whatever. So yeah, not ideal, but yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing about this bike that I don't like is the gearbox. It needs to be redone completely. It's just a piece of crap gearbox. Other negatives, if I really had to think about it, I guess the fact that there's 2 oil filters in there that have to be changed every time you do an oil change is a bit of a pain in the butt. You know, they can cost you 15, 20 bucks each, so you're spending like 30 or 40 bucks just on oil filters every time you do an oil change. You've also got 2 screens to clean every time you do an oil change, but because it's a low maintenance bike, you know, you're only doing that every 5,000 Ks or whatever. It was a similar sort of thing with the KTM 500, and you had to do that a hell of a lot more often, so it was a bit of a pain. With this, I don't mind it so much. The size of the fuel tank is a bit of a negative for me. 12 litres isn't really enough, although even though the raid tank is in there, I hardly ever use it because I am sort of riding local and just doing day rides. But I reckon it would be nice to have maybe 15, 16 litres available without having to have that raid tank now. The raid tank is a fine addition, but it's a separate tank you got to fill up. It's a bit of a pain. If you've got throwover luggage on this bike, sometimes you can, depending on what luggage you're running, you can get to the main fuel tank here at the back to fill it up with your luggage on there. That's not a problem, but generally you're gonna have to take your luggage off to get the seat off to be able to fill up that raid tank, not to mention your tank bag if you have one. So it's a bit of a pain to get to that raid tank. Be nice if it had a 15 or 16 litre main tank. Don't really know where they would fit that, but it would be nice to have. Not a huge deal. Like I said, that 12 litre tank does do me fine most of the time for the sort of riding that I'm doing. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, reliability. Alright, reliability, that's a pretty big thing with this bike. It's actually probably the biggest reason that I never got one before now, sort of thing. You know, reliability is pretty important to me. I don't want a bike that breaks down all the time. I don't have a ute or a trailer to come out and pick me up. I need this damn thing to get me home every time under its own steam. But does it do that? Well, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know it has let me down one time so far. We'll get into that in a sec, but what I want to do is mention in chronological order what's actually gone wrong with this bike. Now, I do also have this stuff listed on my website. If you go into mvdbr.com under my bikes, there's a page there with KTM 690 problems listed on it. But to go through them quickly for you now, first things first, the dash stopped working. Now, this was after a crash. I smashed into a fairly substantial log that was hidden in some long grass. The bike kind of went arse up in the air and sort of half flipped, landed pretty heavily. It scratched up all my windscreen and stuff, so there was a fairly decent impact in this area. But yeah, the dash went really faint, like you could barely see the numbers, and then eventually it just went off. Couldn't read any of the LCD screen. None of the lights were working anymore. So, you know, like the high beam lights and the indicators and all that stuff stopped working. I looked into getting a replacement. They were way too expensive. I figured that the Trailtech Vapor was a good enough option. And so I grabbed one of those, and it's got the indicator light dashboard around it. That's an optional extra. So yeah, I've got the 4 indicator lights there. The neutral one there obviously works. My blinkers work. High beam over here, that one works. And then you've got oil pressure there. There are a couple that I missed that I can't have, and one of them's the low fuel warning light, so I've really got to just reset my trip meter every time and make sure I fill up when I start getting up around 200 Ks. The other one's the FI light, which is just a general, I think it stands for fuel injection, but it's sort of more of a general electronics problem warning light. That one doesn't work because it's not hooked up to anything there. I do also miss the gear indicator. The old dash had a gear indicator. It told you what gear you were in. It was really small though and hard to see, but yeah, I'm one of those guys that likes having a gear indicator. I do miss that. But yeah, that was the first thing that went, the dash. Now the next thing that happened, and this is when the bike actually let me down, and I thought I was going to have to walk home, but I did actually manage to fix it with a little help from another dude on the trail. If you haven't seen that video, what actually happened was I had this raid tank full of fuel, 6 litres of fuel in there, going over some pretty hectic erosion mounds and jumping the bike. I think that this thing slid back. It was able to slide back and pushed on the airbox here. Yeah, pretty much dislodged the whole intake. Bike obviously stopped and wouldn't restart. I didn't know what was going on. I just pretty much assumed that the fuel pump had died or something like that. Yeah, luckily a fella on a 950 Adventure rocked up. He had a one look at the bike and saw that that intake boot hanging off. And so we basically put that on and off she went. Not KTM's fault, this one. This is an aftermarket thing. I've fixed it by putting a little bit of angled aluminium down there, so that actually stops it from being able to slide back far enough to touch that airbox now, so all good. The next thing that happened was my radiator started leaking. Now this is not KTM's fault either. This bike had been crashed. It didn't have crash bars on it when I got it. I've added those, but yeah, it had been crashed the radiator had been damaged, it had been repaired, it started leaking. I've just ended up replacing the entire radiator with a cheap one from China. It cost me 330 bucks or something like that. I've done a couple of thousand Ks on that Chinese radiator now, and it's going fine. The top mount did actually break off. The welds gave way, but I've just actually fixed that with a bolt and a nut on the other side of it. So that's okay. You can't expect too much for that price. I don't complain about it. It's still there, it's still working. And then finally, the most recent thing that happened that I've noticed is this chain slider here has been worn through, and the drive chain started chewing into the swing arm on the bottom of it there. Now this was probably due to bad chain maintenance. I feel like I had the chain too loose, and it must have been flicking up as it was driving and just chewing away at that swing arm. I'm running the chain a little bit tighter now, kind of hoping that's fixed the problem. I did get a new slider as well, and I've also gone up from 14.45 in the sprockets. I've gone to a 15.47, so it's pretty close to the same gearing. Slight bit taller, but yeah, bigger sprockets will keep that chain away from the swing arm a bit, so hopefully that's fixed that. And yeah, that's it for reliability, guys. There's nothing else I can tell you. Like, it has never actually let me down, never left me stranded. It nearly did that time with with that intake boot, but it was able to be fixed. I still rode it home. Yeah, this thing has never let me down, really. Now, granted, I've only done 13,000 Ks, but they have not been easy Ks, guys. This bike's been put through the ringer, been beaten around a fair bit, dropped, and yeah, fairly rough trails and single tracks and stuff for the most part. Not a lot of easy riding for it. One thing I will mention though, I feel like is a reliability problem waiting to happen, is this wiring back here. All that gets bent back and forth every time you steer the bike. It's, you know, rubbing on stuff. Yeah, I just feel like that's the next thing that's going to give me trouble. It is a fairly tall bike. I'm only 5'10", but I can handle this bike just fine. Big shout out to Pete from Hippo Drones. Check out his channel, there'll be a link up in the corner here, guys. Pete actually asked me to measure the seat height of this bike. Now, as far as I know, this bike is stock. It has had the suspension revalved, possibly resprung. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm pretty sure it's the stock height. I don't think it's been lowered. I did get the tape measure out in the garage, and so far as I can tell, the seat height of this particular bike when it's sitting at rest, just sitting under its own weight, is around about 920 millimeters, which is around about 36.2 inches. I'll have to actually look up what the stock height is supposed to be. I think it's around about that though, and I think that is a fairly high seat height really, but I'm only 5'10", and with the stock seat, I can get the balls of both my feet just to the ground. So I was kind of lucky that the bike is skinny, which helps a lot with that. But yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. What I don't like is how far the kickstand has to swing down before it'll come back up again. It can be a real pain, especially when you've got luggage or something on. You've really got to lean, and a lot of people have talked about this, you've got to lean the bike way over this way just to be able to get the freaking stand up. And yeah, if you're parked on sort of not perfectly level ground and you've got a bit of a lump there or whatever, yeah, I've had trouble getting this stand up. One way to overcome that, of course, is to kick it up before you get on the bike. So you want to make sure you can throw your leg up over your luggage if you need to. So there you go, Pete. That's the seat height of the 690. Now, this bike does have, I would say, fairly poor ground clearance compared to your average enduro bikes. You know, compared to a lot of your bigger twins, it's probably got fairly good ground clearance. But yeah, I haven't measured that, but yeah, it's definitely not excellent ground clearance. But I think that if you needed to lower this bike 1 inch, you know, you'd probably still get away with it. But of course, a lot of that depends on your actual skill level and what sort of riding you're going to be doing. If you're going to be going over big logs and that sort of thing, having that reduced ground clearance could be a bit of a problem. But yeah, for me, you know, it looks like a tall bike. Like with me standing behind it here, I bet you it looks like I wouldn't be able to touch the ground on it. But it looks tall and scary, but really it's not that bad when you actually get on it. Well, let's move on. Okay, so what's left? Well, positives, right? What are the positives about this bike? Pretty much everything else. It is a ton of fun, guys. This is definitely a fun freaking bike. It pops wheelies, it skids, it's powerful. It's got oodles of torque, it lugs like a tractor. It'll go just about anywhere once you know how to ride the damn thing. And for me, it's just the perfect balance of rideability and off-road capability. And I also find it comfortable. You probably noticed that it's got the stock seat on it. It did actually have a seat concept seat on it when I got it. I found the stock seat to be just as comfortable and not as wide, so I was able to get my feet on the ground easier. A lot of people bang on about how uncomfortable the stock seat is. I don't find it to be so. I find this just as comfortable as the stock Tenere 700 seat, which is pretty bad anyway, but it's good enough for the riding I do. So yeah, as I said, I can jump on this thing at home. I don't have to trailer it. I can ride it out to the trails. It's buzzy on the road. It's not pleasant at high speed, but it'll do it. And it doesn't need the oil change as soon as you get home. It's just a super fun bike, guys, and people that don't like the 690 701 platform, I feel like they just don't know what they're missing out on. Yeah, it is kind of true that your enduro buddies won't want to ride with you when you're on this thing because you'll be holding them up, getting stuck on stuff that they just sail through, and your adventure buddies aren't going to ride with you either because this bike's cheating. It just does all the hard stuff too easily. But that's what it's all about, guys. It's a compromise. It's your classic jack of all trades, master of none. But in saying that, it definitely does lean towards more of an off-road bike. This is an exceptionally good off-road weapon with some road capabilities. And I just freaking love it. Can it do flowy single track? You betcha. Can it do tight, gnarly single track? Damn right it can. It ain't going to be as quick as a lighter bike through that sort of thing, but it'll do it. And you get the fun of popping wheelies all the way home while the other guys are loading their bikes up on the trailers. So a couple of other quick, good little things about this bike, guys. Maintenance is fairly cheap. You've only got, of course, one set of brake pads on the front. That also, of course, makes it easier to get the front wheel off if you need to change a tyre. Tyres are cheaper for this bike, of course. You can run a 120 tyre on here. You don't need the big 140s, 150s, which are, of course, a lot more expensive. This is a 2.5-inch rim, not a 4-inch rim. Yeah, a lot of people run 130 tyres on here. This is a 120. It's perfectly fine. You've got a 520 pitch chain there, 520 chain and sprocket, so they're a lot cheaper to replace than your 525s that you sometimes get on bigger bikes. Valve maintenance on this bike is an absolute dream. I actually did a valve check on the Yamaha Tenere 700, and I tell you what, it was a massive nightmare. You had to actually drop the engine forward. Anyway, it's a big job. Fiddly, painful job. This bike here is the polar opposite of that. It's so easy. You take the seat off. In my case, I've got to take the raid tank off, which is easy. It's just got a Velcro strap holding it in. On a stock bike, you'd have to remove that big air box. And then you've got a breather hose and I think 4 bolts holding the valve cover on. You don't even have to take the timing chain off the sprockets or anything like that to change the valve shims. I actually re-shimmed. I think both my intakes were needing re-shimming at 30,000 Ks. It's so easy to do valve maintenance on this bike, not just checking the valve clearances, but actually changing shims. You can do it with your eyes shut, and that's a huge bonus for us backyard mechanics. Now we'll quickly talk about the suspension on this bike. I find it to be excellent for the riding I'm doing. It is uncomfortable on the road. It's not set up for a plush ride. It's definitely more set up for the big hits, jumps and that sort of thing. Not motocross or supercross by any means, but the big erosion mounds and taking those big hits, and it does that really well. It's comfortable enough for me on the road, especially when you put a bit of luggage on here. It does sort of soften it up a bit. But yeah, I love this suspension. As I might have mentioned already, it has had some work done to it by MPE. I kind of mentioned turning this thing into an adventure bike. I haven't really done a lot of camping on it. I think I've only been on 2 little camping trips so far on this bike, but putting my Krieger luggage on here was perfectly fine. I was expecting to have things rubbing off and getting burnt on the exhaust and all that sort of thing, but it was actually pretty good. So yeah, the bike handled fine with the luggage on there. A couple more things I wanted to mention was the clutch. The clutch is excellent on this bike. It's a Magura clutch, but this one actually takes .4 brake fluid. I know a lot of the Magura clutches in the past had to use mineral brake fluid or some bloody thing. The ABS on this bike, when I got it, it had the dongle to disable the ABS, but I couldn't work it out. I'd never know what was going on with it. Sometimes the ABS would turn off, sometimes it wouldn't. You had to roll forward a bit to turn it off or something. It was just a pain in the butt. So, I've gone with a spacer in the rear wheel sensor, so that's completely disabled the ABS. And because I've got the aftermarket dash on this thing, I don't have a button to turn off the ABS anyway. So yeah, basically that's the only option I've got, disable it. And yeah, I really love it. I don't have to worry about ABS or traction control. This bike doesn't even have traction control. I think that came out in the 2019 model. But yeah, ABS is never on. The whole ABS thing is probably a bit of a point of contention, but I've grown up with bikes that never had it. I don't like it and I don't want it. And I'm glad to not have to put up with it on this bike. All right, we'll briefly touch on looks and sound of the KTM 690. Firstly, looks. Now, it's subjective. Looks are subjective. Everybody's got their own different taste, but to me, that thing sitting there like that looks pretty damn sexy for a motorcycle. I actually do love the look of the 690 when it's sort of kitted up a little bit with the windscreen. It looks good to me. Now, of course, as I've mentioned many times in the past, the only thing I would change about the looks of this bike is that stupid thing there being on the wrong side. Everybody knows a dirt bike should have the exhaust on the right hand side, but anyway, it is what it is. But yeah, for a dirt scooter, I reckon the old 690, especially this year model in this colour scheme, is pretty cool. I like it. Now, we'll just quickly chuck in a sneaky plug here, guys. If you're already a 690 fan, or you're thinking about getting one, and you want to grab yourself a t-shirt, a 690 t-shirt, I've actually done one up that you can purchase through my store at gear.mvdbr.com. Check it out. Little design I whipped up myself. I think it's pretty cool. You know, let's talk about the sound of the 690. Yeah, like when it comes to sound, I think this thing actually sounds pretty good from somebody else. Like if you're watching it go by or listening to it right along the road. As you can see in this video clip, it sounds pretty good. You know, that acro pipe there without the baffle in it gives it that nice big thumper crackle. Sounds a bit like a wet fart, but it sounds good for a single cylinder 4-stroke. Alright, you crack it open, sounds alright. What I don't like is when you're actually riding the thing, and especially at low speeds, when the exhaust isn't putting out a lot of sound, you can really hear that Counter Rocks engine, and having that aluminium bash plate on there does not help because it reflects that noise back up at you. It sounds terrible, but yeah, at least for everybody else it doesn't sound too bad. Alright, this is going to be a real quick list of everything added and changed on this bike, guys. Firstly, we've got the Oberon clutch slave cylinder, of course, as I mentioned earlier. There is that aftermarket fuel pump in there somewhere. The Road Garage 6-litre under seat fuel tank. Big old acro titanium exhaust. There's the Fuel Talk fueling dongle. There is a lithium battery in there just to reduce weight a little bit. The suspension tuned by MPE. The upgraded subframe bolts from Perrin-Moto. The CJ Designs aluminium fuel filler. Lots and lots of people ask me this question. What's your windscreen? What's your windshield, Josh? It is a Screens for Bikes. There's the sticker right there. Screens for Bikes. There will be links to whatever I can find of this stuff in the description of the video, guys. But yeah, some people hate that screen. A lot of people seem to like it. I actually really like it on the 690. I didn't at first, but it's grown on me. We've got a rad guard radiator guard in there. We have, of course, got the B&B Off-Road Engineering aluminium bash plate. Also from B&B, we have the aluminium rear rack, and I think this luggage plate actually came from AliExpress or something. We've got the double take mirrors, and I've put some different alloy extension arms on there. They're a bit shorter than the stock Adventure ones. Got the quad lock handlebar mount there with the dampening rubbers. Got a couple of USB ports here. I think they're Lightning Fast branded, but yeah, got a little waterproof cap on there, which is good. B&B also make this front sprocket cover and case protector. I'm running the stock 15 tooth sprocket on the front now and a 47 on the rear, which gives me a little bit more download torque, lower gearing. We've got the Outback MotorTech minimalist sort of crash bars. I would highly recommend these guys. Another one I get asked about quite a lot is the tank bag, and that's a Nelson Rig Trails and Light tank bag. I love it. It's a perfect size for the 690. I just wish it had side pockets, just a couple of small side pockets, something I could put my earplugs in and whatever else, because, you know, I'm always digging in here looking for my freaking earplugs. They always seem to manage to get to the bottom under everything else. A couple of little side pockets would be mint. That's somebody's recommendation. I put on the Pro Grip 786 foam hand grips, guys, and they do get rid of a little bit of the vibrations in the handlebars, so they're pretty good, and they're lasting quite well too. 18 months later, they're still going pretty good. We've got the Barkbusters Universal Fat Bar handguards there with the VPS plastics on there. What can you say about Barkbusters, man? They're tough. They're the best, the original and best handguards. Those bar risers there are from Nice CNC. The foot pegs and the brake pedal are also from Nice CNC, and these split pin free pivot bolts, or whatever they are, they're from Nice CNC as well. They're awesome. There's a nut on the back there. You never have to worry about freaking split pins again. The shorty clutch and brake levers are also from Nice CNC. Highly recommend. 2-finger clutch, 2-finger front brake. This bag on the back is also from Nelson Rig. It's a rear fender bag. I'll have a link to that in the description if anybody wants to grab one of those. It's great for tools and tubes and all that sort of thing. That little gear shifter there is from Zeta. Of course, we've got the Trail Tech Vapor dash and indicator lights surround, which you have to purchase separately. As previously mentioned, we have the China radiator in there. Still going alright on this side. That weld hasn't broken yet. But yeah, like, it keeps the bike cool. It does a good job. It's fine. And that's it, guys. Probably sounds like a lot of stuff done to this bike, but in reality, you know, a lot of the stuff you got to do to any bike, or you want to do to most bikes anyway. But yeah, that's my 690. Well, I think I've pretty much mentioned everything I can. I know this isn't really a technical review of the bike or anything, guys. It's more sort of about my experiences with the bike, why I like it, what's gone wrong with it. There's probably still a lot of people out there that are put off by the claimed unreliability of this bike, but you know, I'll be honest, I wish that I hadn't listened to that crap back in the day. I wish that I'd gotten one of these sooner, and that's the honest truth, because this bike for me it's what I want, and it's perfect for what I want to do. Don't get me wrong, I would love to have a big twin cylinder like an Africa Twin or a GS or something, like a big bike as well, because I do love the touring and, you know, seeing, you know, different places that I wouldn't want to take this bike. Obviously it ain't as easy to handle in the bush as a 300 two-stroke or something, but you know, for a low maintenance bush basher, I don't think you can do much better than one of these. Now look, there are people out there that have had a lot of troubles with these bikes, whether that's down to they're just a few lemons out there, or they don't maintain them properly or whatever, I don't know. But you know, I can honestly say that all the stuff I've mentioned in this video is the only troubles I've had with this bike. You know, it's otherwise been perfect. It fires up first time, every time. When it's cold, it just fires straight up. Gotta love that fuel injection. This bike has just proven itself to be super trusty, and you know, I won't be parting with it anytime soon. But yeah, how many other bikes in reality are there around that you can, you know, hit the single track and the gnarly hill climbs on Friday, load the luggage on Saturday, go for a camp, still have the power to do mad skids, pop wheelies, have an absolute blast on, you know, this is a powerful bike, and still have that freaking reliability, guys. It's a bit of a unicorn, you got to be honest. There are a lot of people out there that say you don't need power on a dirt bike. You know, maybe some people don't. I kind of like it. I actually love it. I love twisting that throttle, spinning up that back wheel, lifting that front wheel. And you know, I know what I'm talking about because I've been there. My first bike when I got back into riding was a WR250R. As great of a bike as that was to get back into riding, off-road riding, I quickly wished I had more power, and that's where the 450s and 500s came into it. But yeah, in reality, I should have gone straight to something like this after the WR250. Anyway guys, I'm just rambling now. I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. Don't be afraid of the 690 reliability. Look around for a good one. Low Ks, all the fruit, can't go wrong. See you on the next video, guys. Cheers.